First of all, we have Toni Joyce. Toni was one of the main and fiery activists who, as you just saw, played an integral role in the campaign. Next we have Jean Rice. Jean was another key activist. She and her former partner Rod Hayes were deeply involved as well. And finally we have Claire Vernon, who was one of the independent organs and strongly supported the campaign. Please join me in thanking Toni, Jean and Claire for what they achieved for all of us and for being here tonight to share their memories and insights. So Toni, I'm wondering if you could begin by sharing some of your reflections of those events from four decades ago.
I don't even know where to begin. I hope I said at the time, I'm never going to lie down in front of a truck with you've got a bulldozer in the front of it. I actually lay down with that Italian-sounding councillor guy who ran away to phone his superior officer. And I said to him, go and find somebody more senior to you. And he did. It was the most disgusting thing, and I said this, you heard it, like, I was working at the time. I got a phone call from a friend who lived around the corner in Gowrie Street. She was a senior nurse at our Prince of Wales, but she lived there and said, Toni, can you get, I was at Gore Hill with the ABC, get over to your street, they're tearing out the road closures. And I said, what do you mean they're tearing out the road closures? She said, they're ripping them out, they're just ripping them out. And we've got to stop it, So I said, okay. And I ran over Harbour Bridge in the car, and I was there right from the go-get. And I can only say, as you may sort of be able to detect, I'm a bit loud and I'm a bit forceful. And I think it comes from having a lot of red hair and being a bit short. You have to defend yourself. But I also hate misogyny, and I hate arrogance, and I hate imperialistic sort of decision-making that doesn't involve the people that are actually affected. And on that basis alone, I got elected by all these good people who did all the really hard, dirty work in the background. They researched all those details. They got facts. They got things that those people couldn't refute. And I just stood up and said to them, go on, refute it. And basically, I was on air every radio station, every morning, every afternoon. Because they did it at the worst time imaginable. Being a television producer, it's the deadest time of the year. Christmas. No news is absolutely happening. And of course, we got airtime with all the channels every night for 6 nights in a row. We got coverage every morning. I actually got sick of the sound of my own voice. But it was just the most, wasn't it, exhilarating, but just awful. At one level awful, but I just said to Jean, don't you feel like we should really pat ourselves on the back for actually being able to say, don't we live in the most, I still live in Newtown, I live on the other side of King Street now. But it was, I wouldn't swap what we did for anything, because we ended up with what we have, which is just fabulous.
It's been interesting. After Andrew contacted me, my memory is not real good for a lot of this stuff. And so I've been talking to lots of people. There are lots of people still in the area who were involved then. And some of you in the audience and others. So just trying to remember what happened and what the sequence of events was. And, you know, I've got 40 years of work since then on top of the folder. I couldn't find the folder of stuff. Rod's in the midst of rebuilding his house down the south coast, so he couldn't be here. But just seeing that footage, I remember some of the banners. We had a whole lot of calico and put it out on the street and painted those banners that were in the back of this hall. Rod's got really good calligraphy. But we've done banners for peace rallies and all sorts of other things, so they got really used with layers and layers of information over them. But yeah, I think I've always thought that they chose Christmas because they thought everyone would be away.
Oh, absolutely.
But everyone was home.
And we were all house renovators. Every one of us was renovating. We had so many lines, tooth baths, which you put out in the middle and put cement in. We had every wardrobe, every crossbeam, every piece of particle board that you could imagine in our backyards to put out there. It used to save going to the tip, didn't it? And also those talented people at Redfern, you know, seriously rebuilding the road, they were all renovating their houses as well. We were all very clever, very handy. They just didn't know what they had put themselves on. It was funny.
But yeah, and I think they didn't expect that there would be journalists and authors and architects and
Town
planners, you know, so that they had a lot of particular people who knew how to use the system. So we, you know, after that, the reprieve on New Year's Eve, what we developed when we did that was a phone tree, no mobile phones or anything, so we had a phone tree. Julie's got it.
Yeah. I've actually got a copy of your file that you gave me when I was researching it in 1994. And I have this fabulous letter from the ABC to you, which I think everybody will appreciate the humour and how gutsy and fabulous Toni was. She gets this very funny letter from someone at the ABC. I can't even tell whose signature it is
Michael
on phone.
Shrimpton, head of CDN.
Oh, there it is.
Executive producer extraordinaire, and a man who thought that I was
She just
really
sums Toni up just so beautifully.
Oh, this is a shriek. Toni Joyce, 4 Muni Street, Newtown, dear resident Erskineville. As Frank Ward would say, will you still talk to us when you're rich and famous? When I saw you popping up on the news coverage of the Great Street opening closing fiasco, I thought to myself, what price? Susan Ryan, Margaret Guilfoyle, Rosemary Foote, even. We've got our own Toni in there, ripping strips off the council for all she's worth. The day you're elected, I'll provide the handbag and the gloves. Not exactly the calibre of Jeanne d'Arc. Toni d'Erskineville does have a certain ring. I searched the news footage of the final reclosure ceremony in the hope of catching a shot of you in there knitting as the heads rolled, but to no avail. Have a great year in '86. Bugger the Garbos, they can go the long way round. Cheers, Michael Shrimpton.
So that's on an ABC letterhead.
Oh yeah, he was not, I worked in his department for a while doing a couple of shows. Funny man, and he's the originator of Countdown and the whole concept and everything, a lot of other things. I won't completely I was called Toni d'Erskineville for some time. Antoinette d'Erskineville for some time.
Thanks for bringing that along.
Yeah.
So,
And you were wonderful. All of you were just so fab. You and Rod and Toni, you were so good and so inspiring to interview. And just looking back over all because I recorded all the interviews and just how articulate and, you know, how much you learned and how much, you know, it sort of gelled the community together, because we're all kind of just recently moved in and we could only afford to buy houses in Erskineville and doing up houses, and it really brought the community together. And thank
Can
you
I
very
just say
much
something
for
to
that.
all of you, however many of you are really die-hard old Erskineville Newtownites, for the newer ones. We arrived at a time where we were literally being called the gentrifiers.
Yeah.
When I actually had to call the head of Newtown Police down to my house in Union Street there, which is featuring a lot with stuff all over it. I used to do a lot of my house renovating in little terry-telling jumpsuits with a zip up the front, so you know, bare legs, bare arms, lots of tits and ass, and hair. And I had this uniformed senior officer arrive because I was trying to help everybody get rid of the young lads from Redfern who were coming down to it. One guy was selling cigarettes out the back door of his shop, 2 at pop, right? And they were breaking the aerials of our cars, doing this sort of thing. And he stood there and in the most condescending, misogynist manner addressed me. And I took it for about half a minute and I thought, this is only about sort of, I don't know, 6 months after the road closure. And I just looked at him and I said, when you finish checking out my tits, get your eyes above that level and look at my face while I say to you, I am your new gentrified population. And you will not talk to me like that. And you will deal with the problem we have here because we're going to make sure that you do. You understand how things have changed? From his stance of my sort of 20-something, I'm about 32 or something, to his 50-something, and he looked at me and said, "Oh." And I thought, this is what you know you have to deal with. Don't ever let anybody talk to you like that over anything. Never say die. Sorry.
So perhaps now we can hear about what things look like from the council side. So, Claire.
Thanks very much. My son Gareth turns 40 today, and well I remember when he was 4 weeks old, the phone going crazy that the council workers had gone in and pulled down the closures which we'd fought so hard to get. As an independent on the council, I remember heading straight down to see what was going on, and Terry Murphy, those of you who would remember Terry Murphy, we had a love-hate relationship, of course. He was the Labor alderman, and he looked at my 4-week post-baby body and said to me, "But Claire, when's that baby due?" And I remember then the Christmas Eve, Frank and I putting out a letter which really upset people, the politicians, because we included in the letter to all the residents the phone numbers of the Labor alderman and Mr Stewart and others. And that was what Bill Hardup was referring to in the council meeting. He was really upset about that. And it was a heady time, and I remember the article, Gareth was mentioned for the first time as a 6-week-old baby. I took him to the council meeting that day, and I remember it being so rowdy, and he slept through it. And it was really interesting how it really was the residents who made the difference. It was people power at its best. So even as elected people, we had a role to play. It wouldn't have mattered. And what was interesting was there had been a lot of debate about the closures, like any big community change. But what they did by getting rid of those, taking it apart, it pulled everybody together. It was the best thing that they could have done to unite the community, because suddenly there was this common enemy. And just for those, just to paint a picture for those who would remember in the 80s, what was happening in council is all of us independents had got elected, and we were all out of resident action groups. Of course, the Liberals called us communists, and the Labor called us, closet liberals. We were probably somewhere in between. And that meant that for the council, Labor and Liberal voted together against the independents. And that really riled and upset people. And that's what Toni and others were referring to as just a very nasty place to be. And a lot of decisions being made on sheer bloody politics as opposed to what was in the best interests of the residents. So it was an amazing time, and as I say, all power to the residents for making it happen.
Okay, thank you all. We have a few minutes for questions, but I'm going to ask all of you, what advice would you give to the campaigners and activists of today to stop this from happening?
I think we had a lot. We did a quite professional report that that covered all sorts of bases and was illustrated and was quite sound, and I think that made it very hard for them to refute. So it's having the information.
Can I just tell you how wonderful this woman is, because she won't tell you herself. I was sort of effectively a lot of the time the voice, but I was given all the information and all the facts from a group of people led by Jean and Rod and others. South Coast Goldenberry, sorry, Bevis. All those people did what you have to do, and that is collect information and get facts and get them so they're absolutely verifiable and no one can question them and have them really back up what your arguments are. Then it doesn't matter then whatever happens, if it's there and it's fact and you've got it backing you all the time, which we did. Anytime they brought anything up that we could refute, we only had to get the fax machine going in the background. And we were all good researchers and good on the phone with mates. We would find that information out really, really quickly. It's your core. Have your facts.
Okay, thanks, Toni. Any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Not a question, just a bit of background. Kevin Stewart was mentioned quite a lot. Barry Unsworth pops up in a couple of shots in the video. I remember that Unsworth was the real instigator. He, very early, shortly before that Christmas, he wanted to visit his mother, and his chauffeur couldn't find his way through our road closures. So he directed Kevin Stewart to close the road closures. That's my understanding.
That's right.
Toni mentioned the television coverage, and she's absolutely right. It was a dead news period that goes on right through Christmas, and we literally got coverage morning and night. I even got a call from a friend in West Australia who said, "Roger, you're on the news." Yeah, it was. I don't think politics on the street mattered. It was the residents all together. We campaigned for ages, 18 months earlier. We had lots of really successful meetings with councillors to sort out how the road closures would work, and it was organically agreed to. So when that decision came by Unsworth and the then government to close it, the whole suburb was in uproar. We were outraged. That's why we won.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that.
But there were 2 deaths reported in the Newtown Guardian newspaper in 1971 on Union Street. And then the article was about a 3-year-old girl who'd been struck 2 weeks previously.
But a lot of that information's in the report that we did.
It's all information in there, and its sources, which are all documented. It's all, this person.
Yeah, I've probably got it in here somewhere. I remember looking through it.
She has the Bible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for a fascinating, inspiring presentation. Those of us who were involved in campaigning today, who are perhaps younger, we have a tendency to join maybe an email newsletter group, and a Facebook group, and we might attend a Teams webinar. What really struck me was kind of your analog process. And I wonder if you could talk me through that a little bit in terms of how you did the organising. Was it door to door? Was it community action groups?
Committed mini pubs on the corners.
Sorry,
Committed mini pubs on the corners. That's my house, her house, various other houses all around the area where you could knock and come in and have a glass of red, white, or fancy, really. Open house, and we all sat down and talked about everything. And everybody, all the meetings were in our houses. We had everybody's phone number. We phoned everybody. But the open house philosophy of being available to each other everywhere, anytime, was what it was, to put it in your words, analogically possible. It's amazing what you can do without a mobile phone.
The phone tree predates the mobile. It was tremendously efficient.
Yes.
Yeah, that phone tree would, someone would find something had happened and come to like Toni's place or our place,
I had
and
3
we
people
would start
to
the tree.
Yes.
So
we rang 3 people, those 3 people rang 3 more people, those 3 people rang 3 more people. So within minutes, you could have sort of 36, 56 people with the information and tell them where you needed to be.
And I think when you knew the media was coming, you could stage the event.
Yes.
And wait for the cameras.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I did.
And people would be there within minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that phone tree was used again later, so that we're, you know, it sort of bred some friendships that are still, you know, there's a whole lot of us who are still in the area and still doing things together. But the residents opposed to Runway 3, we use the same phone tree. And that same sort of...
we met each other again in
Yeah.
similar circumstances.
And I think it sort of bred some community cohesion because you got to know all these people.
And that was very evident in the footage, particularly, dare I say, for women. You could see how cohesive as a group we were.
You can still do it with a mobile phone, you know.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Wendy at the back, do you want to come up and use the microphone? Or
First of all, I just thought it was a fantastic presentation. I came here in 1986 and I didn't know a lot of that, although I do know Jean well. So thank you so much, Andrew, for all the work you've done. What I wanted to say was actually phone trees were used even in the anti-apartheid struggle. They were used, I think, even before that, certainly Victoria Street. But what I want to say is we're all here tonight, and I assume a lot of this will go up on the web, but I feel like I walk through those beautiful little parks nearly every day, and I sort of always think about the road closures because I do know about them, but I think it would be really good to have a little park in all of those ones that were saved at that time. It could almost be a generic thing, like, and you know, it's something as people walk around, a little bit of history, and then maybe point you to where you could get more. But I think it's such a bad, so much to be learned from what you did. And particularly at the moment, when you're a lot of the winds that came, you know, in the 70s and in the, even, you know, started pushback came and started coming pretty soon after that. But, you know, a lot of it has been lost right now. So, you know, a lot of those rights and things for people in our generation, we sort of took, pretty much for granted, I think, for a certain number of years. So, anyway, just congratulations, and that's just an idea I'd like to put forward.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, and thank you to our guests tonight for your insights and for your continued dedication
Hold on
to
a
the
second,
community.
just wait.
Yeah, Toni, Jean, Claire, please accept these small appreciations for your efforts and for joining us tonight.
Oh, it's another flask of red wine. Is that